Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the fireside chat for you this evening today between two amazing individuals. If I can slowly ask them to make their way to the stage. One is Mr. Raj Kapany. He has a great background across investing, building companies, and great philanthropic efforts as a trustee to the Sikh Foundation. And the other one is Mr. Mandeep, who has a great operating background, tech background, investing background. So I want to turn it over to you. Please, huge round of applause for these two guys. Let me get one more mic.
Do I need a mic?
I'll get one.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. So glad to be here and see all these beautiful faces. I hope the food was good. Was it? Somebody save me a samosa, please. I didn't get anything. Too long a line. Look, I want to tell you about 50 years ago, my family, my father, my mother started a foundation called the Sikh Foundation. I'll be very brief. The idea was around the arts, the books, and the heritage of the Indian culture. It's a beautiful, beautiful story, and a lot of the information is there. We're co-hosting with Manveer at Plug and Play. We believe, and this was my brainchild, to get beautiful people that are in tech in front of other beautiful people in tech and try to network and learn the trials and journeys we all take to become successful entrepreneurs. It isn't easy. And it's not just a business growth experience, it's a personal growth experience. So I've asked Mandeep Arora to sit here today and tell us a little bit about his story and his journey. And by that, I think I should start with his background, just make a little bit of an introduction so you know who he is. Mandeep is a computer science engineer from UCLA. He went on to get an MBA at Stanford. He founded a company and was CEO of Cantaloupe Systems, a vending SaaS-based model software company. And he sold that company to a NASDAQ public company by the name of USA Technologies. Since that time, he's been a partner at Nordic Ventures as a venture capitalist. And after experiencing the incredible tech companies in the Valley, he missed the ability to get back in the field and become a CEO again. So he is now a founder and president of Furno Materials. He's on the board of several companies, iKitchens, Rousel, a B2C company, Underlining, a B2C company. These companies are generating 40, 50, $60 million in revenue and profitable, and Zeit. I would say, Mandeep, you're like a three-legged stool. You've been a board member of many companies. You have been a CEO of startups, and you've been a venture capitalist. Not too many people have had all three dimensions, and I think, from my perspective, I'd like to ask you, how did you start Cantaloupe Systems? Why did you start Cantaloupe Systems? Where did that brainchild come from? Please.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're
Good
welcome.
to see you, Raj.
Yes.
Yeah, I started Cantaloupe. My parents were entrepreneurs. My parents started 4 businesses as I grew up. They were, small local businesses, a gas station, an ice cream business, and then a distribution business where they were very successful with that. So I got, a business school education at the dinner table, and I had friends telling me, "Oh, you're going to be an entrepreneur." I said, "No way." I saw my parents go through it. I saw them leave the house at 6 a.m. and come home at 9 p.m. And I just want a regular job. And then I graduated right after the dot-com bust. And I thought I was going to go work at Cisco or Yahoo, and all that hiring stopped. And I had to do something else. And so, I was in denial. I was an entrepreneur. I was just in denial about it. And so as I came out of UCLA, I went to go get my master's degree in computer science. But my co-founder, Ananth, had convinced me. He said, "Hey, why don't we start a business together?" And so we started Cantaloupe as a side project while I was getting my master's, but that only lasted about 10 weeks before we got an order from our first customer. And so I submitted for a leave of absence from the master's program, and we thought we could build the product in 2 months. It took 12, and never went back to the master's program. Ran Cantaloupe for 16 years.
Good. How did you know that after founding the company that you could be a CEO of a company? Where did that come from? And what transition did you have to make to get there?
Yeah. So I mentioned I had a co-founder, Ananth. We were filling out our incorporation paperwork, and there was a line for CEO and there was a line for president. And we looked at each other, we said, which is which? And we flipped a coin. And so I was the CEO. At that time, I didn't think much of it. We ended up having a team of 5 friends, working very hard. We all lived together at my parents' house because we didn't have any funding. It was a really, really difficult time to raise, and we bootstrapped. So I didn't think of myself as CEO, really. It was just a team of 5 of us. But I would say as the team grew, it just became... There was times where I wasn't sure, actually, if I should be CEO, if I should be a CTO, if I should hire somebody. But the team is the one that told me, no, you should be the CEO of this company. And I think leadership is about really caring about the team and building the team, and that was something I always loved. But it wasn't an overnight thing. I really thought about it for quite some time. But once I dedicated myself to it, I said, okay, as the company was getting bigger, I was struggling with it. I found some mentors. I joined some CEO groups that helped me grow a lot, and said, okay, I'm going to do this the right way.
That's great. So when you define leadership, what does that mean to you, or how do you practice leadership in your career?
Yeah, I think, there's different styles of leadership, of course. But my form of leadership is really being a good listener, understanding what's going on, interrogating reality. Actually, Raj was a mentor of mine as I was running Cantaloupe. And I remember at lunch, he grabbed my hand and he said, trust. Trust but verify. Trust but verify. But my style of leadership was have the team around you, have everybody challenge each other really hard in a respectful way, like a friendly fight, if you will. We want to fight about what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and come to the best, let the best ideas win, and not have anybody be shy, regardless of whether they're a senior executive or a junior employee, to challenge what's going on. I think another facet of leadership for me is just having the team, installing the right culture. And for me, that's trust and respect. If you have trust and respect and no agendas and everybody's pulling in the same direction, that's when a team crushes it and can accomplish a lot. And I think also for me, vulnerability. If you want the team to trust you and pull for you, for me, the only way is to let them in and to be transparent if I'm having a hard day or things are not going well, and not to put up a false wall. Of course, there's times when we're running a company, something has to be confidential, but everything that didn't have to be confidential, we shared. We shared financials every single month. We shared goals and how we achieved or didn't achieve them with the whole company every month. Those things were all super important to me.
So to me, leadership also is hiring the right people.
Yeah.
And making sure that you get A players on the bus and, get the bus moving in the right direction. Tell us a little bit about how you hired, how you recruited, and how you got the people on board at Cantaloupe that you needed to get the job done.
Yeah, that's the other the job of CEO to me, a little bit different from leadership. Yeah, raise money, hire the right team, don't run out of money. Those are the 3 things for a startup CEO. And in terms of hiring the right team, what I learned was everybody needs to be managed differently. You don't use the same techniques with everyone, and you have to adapt. But I also learned that there was some types of people I couldn't adapt to, and that was just a limitation of mine, but I had to learn not to identify those people in an interview and not to hire those types of people because I would fail them as a leader. I wasn't able to reach them. I wasn't able to help them grow. And for me, as the company grew, my interviews got shorter and shorter because by the time I interviewed somebody, I wasn't interviewing them for technical skill, right? That they had passed. So for me, within 15 minutes, I developed a system where I could tell, is this person a fit for me? Is this person a fit for a company? And is this person a fit for our culture? Are they here for the right reasons? And I think that varies from company to company and leader to leader. But my biggest and most important question in an interview was to ask somebody about a failure and to hear how they processed failure and how they thought about failure and how they learned from failure. You would not believe the number of people who told me they couldn't think of a single failure that they made in their life. And I make failure. I have made a failure this morning. I make failures every day. And so for me, if you can't admit to failure and you can't explain how you learn from it and grow from it, that's number one. That's the biggest thing.
It's important to recruit, and I was networking at the beginning of the event tonight, and I was surprised at how many people I saw that were starting companies, were telling me about how they were starting companies and they don't know how to get the funds, how to raise the funds. There were very seasoned people that are also interested in raising funds. What advice can you give this audience about how to raise funds? You just raised around yourself at Furno Materials. Tell us, in today's climate, how you raise venture capital funds.
I don't think there's an easy answer or recipe, but I think the one thing is don't read TechCrunch. Every entrepreneur who reads TechCrunch thinks they're failing because everybody else is raising, but all you're hearing is the crafted narrative that company wants you to hear, and they leave out the story of the 50 pitches they made that went nowhere. So I don't know if you guys have heard that metric, but people say it takes about 50 pitches, 50 meetings to raise a round. And I have found that to be true over and over again. It does change, as you raise later rounds, your existing investors, if they're happy with it, they'll help connect you. It does get, in some ways, easier and you may not have to take 50 calls. The diligence gets way harder later, but just be ready, buckle up. It's going to take 50 shots on goal, and don't beat yourself up. I think that might be the most common failure I see when people are raising capital. The other one is making sure you have your story very clear and making it clear, like, why are you doing what you're doing? How do you know people really want it? And why are you the right founder for this company? There's a term, I think Mike Mabels uses it, founder market fit, not product market fit, founder market fit. So for Cantaloupe, I grew up around my parents' vending machine distribution company, and then I started a software company to help vending machine companies. So I was a fit for that market because I grew up in it. I knew the people since I was 9 years old. I had a lot of empathy for them and understanding of that market. So I think those are key things to make sure you have really clear when you go out to raise, and be really narrow. I think one thing that I saw when I was mentoring people on their pitches was they would try to solve 17 problems because they had this really broad vision, but you have to start with something really, really precise and targeted to be successful.
So the days of 40-page business plans is done. It's over. So what do you do? It's the market, the product. How would you explain the business plan build up for the venture capitalists and how that has to be designed for a term sheet?
I think I'm old school because I learned business from my parents who are old school. I still like business plans. They're not good for raising capital, but I think they're really, really good for clarifying your own thinking with your team and really interrogating yourself about what your story is, what your strategy is. So I still recommend doing them, but yeah, that's not going to help you raise capital. A good deck for an early stage company is 12 slides. What's the problem? Number one, what is the problem? What is your insight that you're trying to solve? What is the pain point? How do you know that pain point is suffered by others and not just yourself? What's your solution? Why are you the right team? And how is the investor going to make 10 times their money on the deal?
The board management with venture capitalists can be very, very stressful. They want results and they want them yesterday. And on top of that, you have the management, that tends to take a little bit of time to get it right. So how do you deal with that accordion effect, if you will? Or have you had to deal with it, and how do you manage your way through that process?
What do you mean by accordion effect?
Well, you have the board of directors putting pressure on you, and then you have the management putting pressure on you. And as a CEO, it can be a very lonely job. It's not easy. I've always said to myself, gosh, I don't know if I want to do that again. But
There's a reason I took a couple years off.
That's right. So tell us about, during Cantaloupe times, how you dealt with the board members, and was there any one way that you can think of that, sailed your way through that process?
Well, I think there's a couple parts to what you just asked. One is the pressure. And, if you want to start your own business, get ready for pressure. Because as Raj said, you're getting it from the employees, the investors, the board members, the customers. And I had to, it got to me, in my mid-20s. It was too much. And I had to really get into meditation and yoga. And just exercise for me is it helps ground me. Swimming as well, but meditation and yoga was really, really, honestly, super important for my growth as a leader, because when you're just too stressed out and you're too under pressure, you don't react well. So I think number one with the board is there was times I didn't react well. You're tired, you're stressed, you take things personally. Find an outlet to vent, find a way to stay calm. Don't let it, because your identity, your company becomes your identity. Cantaloupe, I was Cantaloupe. Cantaloupe was me. It was my baby, And so if anybody's talking bad about Cantaloupe, they're talking bad about me, And so just really learning not to take it too personal. So that on the pressure side. In terms of, board strategy, it's the classic mantra, try to under-promise and over-deliver. I think people raise around. And to raise around, you do often hype up the numbers, hype up the story, and then they take that same approach to their board. And it's like, no, they already gave you the money. Now you gotta, be a little more realistic, paint maybe a little bit of a negative picture. And one advice I got from another mentor of mine that Chip Fowler,
yes,
deliver bad news right away. Too many CEOs and founders want to deliver the good news. I had this great meeting with so-and-so, we got this deal, and then the bad things are happening, and they just hold them in until the board meeting comes. And now you've pissed off your board because they show up surprised. Hey, I thought everything's going great. So I learned that, anytime anything bad happened, I sent an email. Those days BlackBerry, just send it to them. This is terrible. This is what's going on. We'll talk more about it tomorrow. Don't hide.
So you go through the development cycle at Cantaloupe, you raise the funds, you bring on the team. Talk to us a little bit about your go-to-market strategy, how you got your product to market, what travels you took to get there, not just physical travels, but what travels did you take also to get the company ready for a marketing flare-out?
Yeah, we actually it took us till our third try to get sales and marketing right. We hired a sales team, let everybody go. We hired another sales team, let everybody go, and it wasn't until the third go around that we finally got it right. I think as an engineer, I really didn't understand sales and marketing and how all of that worked. And when you're an early stage company, it's really hard to bring in professional sales talent because your product is so rough around the edges. You don't have all the infrastructure that a salesperson would have at a larger company. And so the advice I got was the founders have to do all the selling until you get to a point where you have too many leads, you have too many phone calls, you have too many people calling you. Hiring someone and expecting them to just solve the problem of getting your sales engine up and running is probably just asking too much. Now, I think there are exceptions to that. There are some very special people out there. But really knowing you have the leads and the prospects for somebody to execute against is really important. And then I think the other part is once you do start selling yourselves, really being able to step back and analyze what is leading you to success. Because at the first time around, we just weren't ready. We hired people, we weren't ready. The second time around, we were ready, but we didn't really know what we were being successful, but we didn't know why. So we weren't able to train others to be successful, if that makes sense.
Right. So you get the company to over $1 million a month revenue. I don't know if I can disclose this, but it was fantastic revenue growth, sales growth. And then somebody comes to you and says, I want to buy the company. Tell us when you decided and how you decided it was time to sell.
Yeah. As I mentioned, we ran the company for 16 years. So there's times where you just get tired of doing the same thing for so long. There's times when you're burnt out. There's times when you're bored. And so we tried to sell the company more than once. I think that's the other thing. Once you get past all that stuff, people ask me, how do I sell the company? And I said, well, it doesn't always just happen in one shot. We tried to sell the company in 2013, if I remember right, and failed. But actually, it was even though we failed, it was an amazing use of our time because we got all this feedback from private equity funds and really, really serious people who looked and spent a lot of time with us. And they said, well, we don't like this, we don't like that. And we started to hear kind of some consistent feedback through that. And that gave us our plan for the next 3 years. We went out and we executed against the criticism that we got during that process. And by 2017, we had fixed every single one of the key problems that we had, been dinged for in that. And then it was a lot easier. It was still really hard, but it was much easier. In terms of like, how did we know we were ready? It was a good offer. It was a very healthy offer. Our investors were happy with the number. My co-founder and I had personal targets. We'd hit those personal targets. And we loved running the company. We had finally kind of really got a great team in place, a lot of opportunity in front of us. If we owned the company ourselves, we would have kept running it. We would not have sold it. But when you take on venture capital, you're making a commitment to your investors that someday they're going to get their money out somehow. And 15 years is a long, long time. They hadn't been in 15, but some of them had been over a dozen years. And so we took that commitment very seriously. They were amazing. They didn't force it on us. But my co-founder and I just said, hey, these offers don't come easy. Should we keep working for a couple more years, or should we just take it? And we just personally felt it was a good time to kind of finish the mission, if you will.
Well, I think your investors were very happy.
They were. Yeah, they were.
Okay. So then you go into a venture capital mode, and you become a partner at Nordic Ventures.
Nordic Eye Venture Capital, yeah.
Nordic Eye Venture Capital.
Out of Copenhagen.
And that must have been a different transition from being a CEO of a startup to being on the other side of the fence. What was the reason that you made that transition? And can you tell us, I think everybody here would be interested in knowing, in your mind, what does a venture capitalist look for when he's making an investment into a company?
Yeah. why did I go into venture? One, they reached out to me, but after I had left Cantaloupe, I had started helping a lot of entrepreneurs, doing a lot of angel investing, and I was enjoying it, but I couldn't keep cutting checks like that. I was going to run out of cash, so I said, okay, I need somebody else's cash to invest. So that was a reason to go into VC, and I just loved entrepreneurship. So I knew that whatever I did, you mentioned the board memberships, and it's all around entrepreneurship, and as an entrepreneur, I think a lot of us put VCs up on a pedestal, and we're super curious about what's going on the other side of the table. So I was very excited just to kind of learn about the process and be on that side. And I loved working with CEOs. I'd been advising a bunch of CEOs. So that's why I made the shift. In terms of, the other part of your question was what you look for?
What's the criteria to invest?
Yeah, I talked about it earlier in terms of how to put together a deck. Why are you the right person? What is the problem you're trying to solve? And then is it really a venture business? I think a lot of people want to raise venture capital because it's very appealing. But I have a lot of family members who've started businesses and never raised a dime of venture capital and have been very, very successful and very happy. So there's a lot of pitches where I said, this is a great business, but you shouldn't take venture capital. You should own this business. You should run it for as long as you like and not be stressed about needing to hit 7x or 6x. You can run a great business without having to have that pressure of 10x in 10 years or whatever it is. So venture capital is a really great tool if it's the only tool available to you. If you can finance the company and get it running in other ways, you should. But some things like super expensive software to build or deep tech or different models require it. So I think those are really the big things. Why are you the right fit? What is the problem you're trying to solve? And why is this a venture scale company?
So the company will give you their deck, and you'll listen to them. But is there a due diligence process in your mind that you have to go through to check the facts and figures, to trust and verify?
So you're meaning once you kind of pass the initial screen? Then the biggest thing is really talking to customers and really understanding, do people want this? Will they buy it? How fast will they buy it? Who are the competitors? Why will this team and this product win? And also, what are the entrepreneurs' motivations? What do they really want to accomplish over the next 5 to 10 years? And for me, making sure that, just like we talked about with hiring, am I a good fit? Am I the right person for you? I had somebody come to me and their numbers were insane. They were growing, 50% quarter over quarter with an online business related to medication. And we met somewhere and they kept pushing me, look at our numbers, they're great, they're great. And I said, they are great, but I know nothing about medicine and doctors and pharmacies, and you should raise somebody who can help you with this. So I think those are kind of the second phase.
I want to ask you, the C-suite or the CEO of a founding company, when you're looking at them as a venture capitalist, is there anything that you would like to say attracts you to an investment with that team? Is there something that stands out with most of the people that you've invested with? Is it just case by case?
I think there's, it is case by case, but I think there's just for me, there's a certain level of energy you feel when there's a certain level of founder energy that certain people have where you can just feel they are so obsessed with what they're working on and they are so hardcore driven and they will run through any wall because that's what you're going to have to do. You almost have to be a little bit insane about what you're working on to do it, and so that would be what I look for is, why are you obsessed with this weird thing that nobody else really cares about, and you want to see that energy.
Okay, so now you're a founder in Furno Materials. Can you tell us a little bit about why you made the transition over to Furno, and also what attracted you to that company?
Sure. Well, I'm still actually a partner at Nordic as well. But we weren't deploying new capital for a while, and I was getting a little bored, and I was mentoring some climate tech CEOs because I'm really, really passionate about what's going on with our climate and how we solve it. And I believe that they have to be, for-profit, scalable entities. And so was spending time in that space and met a gentleman named Gurinder Nagra, who had founded Furno Materials and was really looking for a business partner. That team it's a big science problem, and the team's a very scientific team. And he knew he wanted somebody with a little more business experience. So we started off as, just a advisor relationship, mentor relationship for many, many months. And over time, he convinced me to come and be the president of the company.
And you guys are venture funded at
We
this
are.
point?
Yeah, the company's raised about $12 million in capital.
Okay. And what's the value proposition of the company? Can you talk a little bit
Sure.
about the technology and
Sure.
product?
So Furno is focused on cement. What do you know about cement, Raj?
It's all around us.
It's all around us. Nice. It is the second most used substance in the world after, what's number one? Water.
Water.
Water and then cement. I didn't know that. I didn't even know the difference between cement and concrete. Cement is the powder that you use to make concrete. When I first met Gurinder, I didn't know the difference. And cement is responsible for 10% of our global carbon emissions. So cement and steel are kind of two huge materials problems if we want to lower our, get to net zero. That we need, you need cement and you need steel if we're going to keep building and thriving. But we need to do it in a cleaner way. And CO2 isn't the only problem. There was a cement plant up here in the hills, in the Los Altos Hills, that got shut down because there's so many other nasty emissions that come from burning coal. The way you make cement is you have a pipe, about as high as the ceiling, and it runs 200 feet long, and you use coal and you shoot a giant flame down this pipe, and it's a very, very old, dirty technology. And so at Furno, we're working on a way of making cement in a much, much cleaner way, lowering the CO2 emissions by 70%. And then we have some ideas of how to get
70%.
70%. And we have some ideas how to get to 98%, but we'll start with 70. And the other problem is, I don't know if you've all heard, they say the Western world has forgotten how to build big things. We haven't built a cement plant in the US in over 10 years. And all of our growth in cement consumption is coming from Turkey and Vietnam. So not only are you putting CO2 into the air making the cement, then you're putting CO2 in the air shipping it across the Atlantic and the Pacific, because we just can't build these mega plants anymore. These are the size of a city block. They cost billions to build. So we're making modular plants that could fit in this room and that you could stack. You build them in a factory, and then you kind of stack them as Lego blocks to solve the construction problem as well.
Is the government providing support for these sort of things? There's ESG, there's climate change initiatives. How does that all affect what you're doing?
To date, no, but the Department of Energy is doing a lot based on the laws that have been passed by the Biden administration to help with some of these problems: steel, local manufacturing, reducing transport costs for these manufactured goods, and cement as well. So we do have a proposal out to the Department of Energy, but to date, it's been privately venture funded.
Okay. Manveer, I think we're to a point of questions, and I'd like to raise a round of applause for Mandeep for coming up here and spending the time, and I hope it was useful for you.
Yeah, who has the first question? We have time for a few. Don't everybody ask at once. Yes.
Hi, excellent insights. Thank you so much. I'm Rishikesh from Sprouts AI. My question is regarding your hiring the sales and team multiple times. You mentioned one issue there. Could you elaborate more on more learnings from what worked, what didn't work?
So I think, as I said, phase one is, well, step one, get the sales going. If you're a founder, get the sales going yourself. And wait until you have so many leads coming in that you just can't handle the volume. And I think that's when you know it's the right time to hire a salesperson. Secondly, how many folks in the audience are engineers? Yeah, okay. So I think there's a classic engineer salesperson friction, especially for younger engineers. Maybe more senior engineers are more mature, but I think there's when you're in a small startup that's been grinding, there could be an anti-salesperson mentality of, oh, they're at the golf course, oh, they don't work that hard, oh, they take off early on Fridays, and there can be a lack of respect for the sales function. But if you've ever tried selling, I mean, you put your heart and soul, especially if you believe in your product, into convincing someone this is good for them, and they say no. It takes a lot out of your energy. It takes a lot out of your soul, to be honest. And so I think instilling respect for that in yourself and in your team with your engineers of, yeah, okay, maybe the person needs help with their demos. Maybe they, don't work in the same way we do, but what they do is really, really hard. And without sales, sales is the lifeblood of the company. So without sales, there is no company. And I think too many engineers really, really, really discount that and marginalize that. And so if you have someone who's good at getting customers to say yes, take everything else off their plate. Don't make them do anything else. If they don't want to, if they're not good at doing the software demo, get them a sales engineer to do the software demo, or you're the founder, do the software demo. Get them their decks, get them their slides, get them what they need. When you find those people who are the good hunters, let them hunt. And then I think there's the other insight would be really understand. I think another failure we often make is we want everyone to buy our product. But when you really get disciplined about understanding who is the most qualified customer for your product, your success rate jumps through the roof. So having the discipline of going, well, you could use our product, but you're not really the most ideal customer. Let me just spend all my time on that ideal customer profile. Sit back and understand why you've been successful, where you've been successful. Like one quirk that we found was we were way more successful with customers. These were family-run businesses often. If they had a child in the business, our success rate was double than if they didn't have a child helping them with their business. Because if they had their son or daughter in the business, they cared more about the future. They cared about upgrading the business. And if they didn't, they said, that's too much work. I'm going to sell in 2 years anyways. So hopefully that's helpful.
We have time for one guy in the front. And as I walk over, for anyone standing in the back, we have more seating to my left. If you need a seat, there's plenty of seating over here.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Arora, and good questions. I have heard many entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs with exits, and somehow some people transition to being venture capitalists or other kind of investment, private equity, etc., etc. I have always come across people who have a gut feeling kind of a management style. Not hardcore, because this is all engineering, this is technology, this is product, this is manufacturing. Why don't executives who are capable of going into the details and depth and do that? Because when I do diligence for private equity, because that's what I do, take companies to public and so on, get them prepared, including the board functions, right? A lot of people don't know, because I know. I used to be a professor teaching this. So why is it that a lot of the people are, kind of a talk, rather than this is what is required, this is what is required, either with examples or good enough quantitative statements of how to do, even how to do the valuation, etc., etc., other than giving it to a CPA. He will do a simple IRR and NPV calculation only, right? That's nothing great. So just wanted to see what is your response, what's your comment?
So sorry, is the question why are
people only just
not
gut feeling, psychology, that kind of a thing,
Sure.
but not hardcore management understanding of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the good leaders and good management styles are very, do have that detail. If you look at the OKR system from, Google popularized, the whole thing about goals is being very specific about what they are, making it clear that there's a number, not a vague thing, right? I think good management is specific, but I do think, by and large, CEOs are not the most detail-oriented people because, I had very, very detail-oriented people on my team, and what's the classic phrase? You can't see the forest for the trees, right? And on the flip side, the CEO's looking at the forest from the high view, usually. There are some very detail-oriented CEOs. It's not a hard rule. But, that we talked about managing people, you just have different types of people, and you want to deploy their skill sets in different ways. So you find that detail-oriented person to run your finance team, that's perfect for them. But don't expect them to level up into, market strategy on the other hand. So I think it's
Well, you
just
could
different
debate him
personalities. Yeah,
over samosa at
we
the
can
end of
absolutely
this.
have that debate over samosas.
Manveer, any
Yeah.
more?
I think that's it.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. I want to thank the Indian Tech Network, Sikh Foundation, and UC Santa Cruz for participating in all of this. Thank you, guys.